The tentative title of this video is Dissolving the Argumentative Self in the Ocean of Radical Acceptance. I know that's a kind of mouthful, but it speaks directly to what we're going to explore a little bit, which is, on one hand, let's call it the argumentative self, the reactive self, the one who maybe unconsciously believes, because of over-identification and because of the endless repetitive ruts of conditioning, that believes that a certain argumentativeness, or just the holding of an argument with life, the opposition, the it shouldn't be like this, I shouldn't be like this way of being, which is what the separate self, the ego self, is predicated on one hand, and the radical acceptance, the radical opening, the falling open into awareness, love, silence, beingness. Almost on the other hand, and how these two live, and how at some point in our lives, and this is why I talk about all of this on this channel, which is about a deeper exploration of the embodiment of spirituality, because we have to get up close with it and very intimate with this conversation. There's a meeting place between healing and non-duality. There's a meeting place between the human experience and the awareness that we are. There is a meeting place where the human experience and the divine oneness merge or meet. But as long as we're giving deference to, or identified with, giving allegiance to, stuck to the argumentative self that quietly, secretly, like I said, believes somewhere inside itself that that's the way of getting through, that's the way of getting answers to this existence, or that's the way to peace, or even more so, the unconscious habituation to the argument. Unconscious because it's grooves and ruts have been carved so deeply into us that we assume that that is who we are, simply because the ruts are so deeply ground into us. If you repeat a pattern, a repetitive kind of mindset, thought pattern long enough, for 20 years, 30 years, it's going to get pretty embedded, right? And so if you multiply that by another 20 years, it starts to become chronic. And that's what we suffer from. That's what people suffer from. It's the chronic habituation, the chronic belief that the ruts of argument the argumentative self, are who I am, are who we are. And when I say argumentative, I don't mean always having an argument. I mean inner resistance. Most argument happens on the inside, doesn't need to happen on the outside, because it's on the inside where it really matters. So we're walking down the street or going about stuff in the house, or a thought arises, or an emotion arises, or a memory arises, or a projection into the future arises. They're all on the inside. They don't need to be triggered by anything external. They're to do with our inner landscape. And that's where the primary argument is. The primary argument is not with the world, is not with other people, is not with the neighbor, is not with the family, is not with the etc., etc. Primary argument is with ourselves. And the argument is a kind of resistance to what is arising, to this thought, to that emotion, etc., etc. And so then if you also then turn it to the outside, that's where the argument has a tendency to become more visible or more known, or has an action in it. Not necessarily, but sometimes. So it comes up in the way we go about our lives. In a short that I've just done, a reel, it could be in driving. You know, the judging one, the argumentative one. Comes up and, starts throwing its rules around because it knows something more than others. They shouldn't be doing that, he shouldn't be doing that, this shouldn't be happening. A kind of argument arises in the store, anywhere. I mean, really anywhere. It's not some special set of circumstances. It's only the tight band of how we think we should be and how we think the world should be, and the protective cage, the protective wall that we live in, that says, if it's not like I think it should be or I want it to be, then there's the resistance and there's the argument. So what does it mean to start actively practicing radical acceptance? Radical acceptance says, even though there might be thoughts, even though there might be ideas, because they've been so ground into me, that this should or this shouldn't be happening, or I'm in argument with this, and because that's how I've always been, and that's how I think that I am. Even though that's going on, is it possible for me to practice some kind of deeper acceptance and not go to the argumentative self, not go there? There's a deep volition within us that we don't even know because it's almost deactivated. Our deeper will, our deeper sense of our own innate inner authority that is almost offline but not quite offline, hidden, occluded, ignored, covered over, veiled. Our power, our authority, our oomph, our presence. It says, even though that's going on, I'm not going to move towards it, and I'm going to stay here. That's where the death is. The micro death of allegiance to the argumentative self. Because what happens, say, you're walking down the street and something happens, and you're like, that shouldn't be happening, he shouldn't be doing that, this shouldn't be happening. And you say in your equanimity, in that moment, I'm not going to listen to that one. I'm going to stay here walking onwards in awareness. What happens to the argumentative self? Does it argue more? Does it argue louder? Does it dissolve? Does it yield? Does it give in? Do you stay? These are the questions. And I'm really not talking about abdicating responsibility where something needs to be done, or, somebody's hurt down the road, or somebody says hi, or, I'm not being ridiculous here. I'm making a very specific point about staying in awareness, or staying in equanimity, or staying in presence, or staying in a deeper acceptance, instead of constantly going to the argument, to this one, really. I think that we have that capacity, but we need to start recognizing it and allowing the possibility of it. And there is something that happens in that. There is, in fact, a death, a micro death of the argumentative self, a micro death of the attachment to the argumentative self. When you don't go to the narrative, when you don't go to the heat, you don't go to the reactivity. It's not a denial, it's a recalibration of our inner authority. And this takes time. And I said the other day, most of the spiritual depth, most of the real spiritual work that is done through failure. Failure is the greatest humbler, is the greatest teacher. Failure to get it right. Failure to remember equanimity in the heat of reactivity. Failure to stay in presence. Failure to be open and to resort to closedness. Failure to stay in love when we attack something or somebody, or spit ugly words or something. Failure. But that failure is where it's at. You fail your way to enlightenment because something happens. I'll talk about this failure as the path. But to get back to what I was saying, this is the invitation of radical acceptance, to just not go to the argumentative self, and then to remain as the openness, emptiness, unknown. Even if there's discomfort, even if you say, well, I don't know what that means, I don't know what's left. Well, that's the journey, is to find out what's left if we don't go there. We carry our argumentative, judgmental, precious self around as though it's the jewel that we have that justifies and maintains our existence. But if you open it up and look at it, it's just a shiny piece of stone and it's got no real value in it. But the deepest acceptance, the deepest openness seems to be the most difficult thing. When you open it up and look at it, it's a magnificent jewel of being that radiates love, that radiates unconditionality into the world, that radiates presence and beauty, the beauty of being into the world. What's to choose? Court this one, court the true beauty, and see through the illusion of this false beauty.